y'all doing? You can see the mic, but don't worry about that. We ain't rocking with that tonight. Tonight, we're going to rock with this little gadget. At least we're going to try to rock with this little gadget. Let's see what we doing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about Virginia politics. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes to make sure that we can see whether or not the algorithm is working. But what we are working on, what I am working on, I'm actually working on a much bigger piece for Virginia politics, about the issues of Virginia politics. We're going to see. How is my mic sounding? How? Let's see if I can position this thing. Get this out the way. Put this up here. And maybe that's a little bit better. Now, who y'all voting for? I'm gonna get this thing started. So I got a question in the chat room. We're gonna see whether or not we get anybody to join. We are live, it is public. So, okay, that part is cool. Let's see if we can get. All right, that looked a little bit better. So you can see I got this little new microphone here. If you've watched any of my morning musings and my walking talks, then you may have seen this little mic. This is the first time I'm really trying to use it live from the studio. And let me see if I can find. I'm literally trying to test some stuff out and have a conversation that might be of some value to you. So if you're tuning in, hit the like button, hit the notification button. But let me get this shareable link and let me see. The notification should be going off. Say something in the chat room if you're here. Say something in the chat room. Say something in the chat room if you're here. Like I said, I'm also doing a mic check. So I'm doing a mic check. I'm doing a camera check. I'm doing a system check. I'm gonna probably have to like clip this video a little bit later once I finish the stream. But I'm trying to see if everything is working. It looks like everything is working. I don't know what the sound quality is like. I was kind of waiting. How the mic sound? How the mic sound? Excuse me for typing in all caps. But I really do want to know what's y'all thoughts. Are y'all registered to vote? Do you plan on voting? Usually I talk about national affairs and national events. But I am definitely going to start, leveling, layering. I don't necessarily want to say switching up, but because there are definitely things that are going on in Virginia that need to be talked about, even if the rest of the country is not talking about them. I'm gonna stick to the national and the international, but I'm gonna also start layering in a focus on some Virginia things, especially since we're now in a world where we are looking at a historical campaign. For the first time in, like forever, we have the chance to elect a woman as the governor, as the head of the state. And so I want to talk a little bit about that tonight as my, at least, my initial weigh-in on the topic. And since I'm waiting for a few people to like chime in or show up even, we gonna see if y'all can say something in the chat so I know I'm actually live. And let me see if I can. No, that don't work. So, okay, I'm live, ladies and gentlemen. Nope, don't want to look at that. There was something else I was supposed to be looking at with this new setup. I thought it let you click some things, but I guess not. Oh, there you go. So, that I don't need, but that one I would need. So, we got this whole new setup, ladies and gentlemen. So I might be like dancing back and forth between what screen to look at. But I do have some choice opinions. I do have some interesting views, at least I think, about this Virginia political scenario. A friend of mine asked me, you know, what do you think about the historic precedent of this is, you know, it really is historic. This is the only time Virginians have had, at least, you know, an opportunity where no matter who you vote for, a woman is in charge. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty big. Now, as you can see what I titled this, we're gonna see if we can get it going like this. So if I'm not looking directly in the screen, it's because I got some things that I need to run down and make sure are appropriate. But so, Virginia politics, this is the commentary of the night. Now, so I don't know how y'all feel. I'd like to know. Say something in the comments. If you're not familiar with my channel, then at least you will become familiar, hopefully. You'll hit the like button, you hit the share button, you'll hit the notification button. And I usually say, let's duke it out on the battlefield. And then I just remind you, that's in the comment section. So here's what I'm saying. When it comes to this whole Virginia politics thing, yeah, I'm registered to vote. I usually almost always vote. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm tired of voting. I'm not going to vote no more. I'm sick of this mess. But I usually come to my senses on the date of the election, and I'll just, you know, I'll go on there and then vote. Even during COVID, you know, I was like, I didn't want to show up in the lines because everybody during COVID was afraid of catching something. But I figured out how to mail in vote. So I do advocate for voting, although I also advocate for those who don't want to vote. One of the things I hate the most is when you hear people try to guilt trip you into voting, and they'll say, our ancestors fought for the right to vote. That don't mean you have to exercise it. We have ancestors that fought to teach us there's no purpose in voting. We have ancestors who fought and taught us there's no even point of staying in this country. So just to choose one particular set of ancestors, I have an issue with that. I don't necessarily know what to call that, but I have an issue with it. So, again, I am an advocate of voting, and I'm not against anybody that says I'm not going to vote. Now, you know, and I'm not here to press you or castigate you or anything. But that's neither here nor there. For those of us who are going to vote, for those of us who are considering voting, and for those of us who think, you know, it is interesting to participate, like, you know, if we participated in record numbers, if we participated in voting for Barack Obama, and I don't care, this is not about whether or not you think he's really black. We voted. We participated in record numbers. That's the issue I'm saying. So if we can participate in the election because it was historic, by whatever measure you call that, then we can participate in this election because it's historic. Now, I'm not here to argue, at least not tonight. I may change my mind. I'm not here to argue, you know, uh, whether or not Winsome Sears is Black American. I'm not here to argue anything on that side of the ballpark. She's a black person. I don't care if she's not foundational. I don't care. I care about policies. We got plenty of foundational Black Americans who are sellouts. So on the, and I'm gonna get into this, on the same, under the same umbrella, if all you care about is whether or not the candidate is foundational Black American. So again, you would be in favor of voting for Clarence Thomas, because he's foundational Black American. Yet all of his policies, all of his ideologies are radically against upward movement. You know, the same upward movement that they always tell us, if y'all just stop complaining and pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, you'd be okay. And then they legislate things in such a way where you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps if that's what you want. So you can probably guess where I'm going with this. The idea here is I'm an advocate for voting. I'm not a Democrat. I'm definitely not a Republican. But I'm not a card-carrying Democrat. I don't sign up for the Democrats. I don't stomp for the Democrats. I don't donate to the Democrats. I don't fundraise for the Democrats. Now, you know, if y'all was talking money, maybe I would do something, but that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is, yes, it is historic. It's monumental to have the opportunity to participate in an election where at the end of the day, a woman is going to be in charge of the state. That's great. I just think it very interesting that, and I hope I'm not being too blunt here, because I've seen the commercials. I mean, I'm actually getting tired of the commercials. But I've seen the commercials. Winsome Sears is better for the state. And then they draw down on particular issues. And I'm sorry, like the one I saw just before I went live, just saying Winsome Sears is a better candidate for the state because Abigail Spanberger voted to allow trans people in the bathrooms at the school. Now, I know this is a hot button issue, but just let me get this straight. Now, I'm sorry to tell you this. I don't care how these places organize their bathrooms. Now, I understand that there are definitely some people out here that care how these places organize their bathrooms. And I even get the idea that you may feel funny, odd, peculiar, off-putting, because some of these places are schools. But at the end of the day, everybody has to use the restroom. Get over it. You're not gonna get the individuals who say this is who they are. And please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not trying to be disparaging to any group of people. But for those who think that they should be making their decision on who runs the state, who's going to be in charge of how much of where the money is allocated. You know, whether or not your school gets funding, you mean to tell me you'd rather the school get no funding? Because to some extent, that's what's at stake. If you vote for the Republican, you're voting for a reduction in school funding. You're voting for taxes to be allocated in ways that don't help the working class, that don't help the poor, that don't help the check people. You know that if you vote for Winsome Sears, I know she's black. Now, and I know for some people, like if you really know me, if you're in my inner circle, then you might be like, but I thought you was gonna vote. Because I'm the pro-black guy in all my cliques, in all my circles. I'm the Afrocentric guy in all my cliques, in all my circles. So they looked at me like, well, I know you're going to vote for Winsome. And I'm like, but why? Like, what would be the purpose? Like, are you even, so here's a question. Are you even pro-black if you vote for the party who continues to put their foot on the necks, legislatively speaking, of black people, just because they're doing it with a black face? I mean, it was somebody that said, what did they say? Somebody said, and I wish I knew who the person was. I can't recall the name. I recall the phrase. So if you know it when you hear it, let me know. Let's duke it out in the comments. Let me know in the comment section. But black faces in high places ain't gonna save us. Now this can be, you can throw this dart out at both the left and the right. But we especially gonna be throwing it out at the right, over here. So for all the people that have like said something to me about, but you so pro-black. Yeah, I'm so pro-black that I'm not gonna vote for someone that's going to deliberately vote for legislation that economically hurts the community just because religiously they may subscribe to the same religious sentiment. Because that's all it is. It's a religious sentiment. Like, I get it. You can feel a way about folk using bathrooms. But you can't legislate against it. You can't take money from a school because of it. The kids need the money to learn. You're going to have to figure out some other way to address the bathroom issue. They're not even in the bathroom all day. They're at the school for 8 hours. They're going to go to the bathroom 1 or 2 times and they're going to come back out. Make sure you're voting for the candidate that's trying to keep the school doors open. Now that's a little bit of my soapbox. And I hope I wasn't too blunt. And I hope I didn't say anything that's like really, offensive. I think I'm trying to appeal to your logic. So, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say this. I'm going to read a couple of things off my little script because I'm working on this thing for a much longer deep dive. But all of this nonsense that I'm seeing in these, at least the Republican circles, the commercials, I mean, what the Republicans are hoping for, what they've always hoped for, is that in the very few instances where they choose a black candidate, I'm not saying they've never chosen a black candidate. Clearly they have. They got a lot of folk. Not a lot. They have several black candidates. Tim Scott. Most people around me, most people in the black community I'm aware of, consider Tim Scott a sellout. I wonder why. Byron Donalds. Most people in the black community I'm aware of consider him a sellout. But these are the types of black people that Republicans pick. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not even saying that they're sellouts. I'm saying most people consider them sellouts. And for that matter, you might very well find some people in the Democratic Party who get thrown the same accusation. Again, y'all see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to be level-headed. So in that regard, yes, you can clearly easily you can have a sellout on either side of the aisle. But if you look past the aisle, if you look past the figure, the person in the seat, let's look at the legislation. And that's what I'm asking people to do. Let's look at the legislation. Because it's the legislation that matters more than the person. If you want your school to continue getting money so that the doors stay open, you know, that may not happen with Winsome Sears. That may not happen with a Republican, especially in this modern day and age. You know, what do I mean? So let me get back to this whole thing. The Republicans, they chose a black candidate. They hope that black people will vote for the black candidate just because they're black. They are hoping that we're so psyched up about voting black that we will use that as our filter, as our measuring stick. And that's what I really want to draw down on. They really do hope that they can get more votes for her because she's black, at least from the black community. You're going to have the Republicans that's going to vote for her regardless. But, I mean, if you don't already know, like, in many election cycles, we end up being at least an unofficial swing vote. We are a swing block. Most Democrats can't win if they don't have a strong support by black people. You know, challenge me on that if you want to. So what the Republicans are hoping for is they can get black people to vote for Winsome Sears because she's black. This is playing the race card. And they're the ones always screaming, don't play the race card. And so what I come up with, or what the thoughts that started to come to my mind is, I want to call it hypocrisy. Should I call it hypocrisy? You see, at the same time that they say you shouldn't vote, like if it's a Democrat, they say you shouldn't vote for the person just because they're black. I might agree, but I might disagree. I mean, there has definitely been times when we at least had the conversation in the community as to whether or not we were going to vote for a person. We at least kicked the idea around to say, nah, I want to vote for a black person. And this person ain't black, so I'm not going to vote. We saw that with the Kamala Harris thing. Now, I'm not in favor of that position. I wasn't in favor of that position then, and I'm not now. But it was a conversation. Now, the Republicans know this. But there's the hypocrisy. Because when a Democrat has a black person running for office, they say don't vote for him just because he's black. But then when they run a black candidate for office, they say, hey, why not vote for a black candidate? That's hypocrisy. They only point out you're playing the race card when it helps them. When it helps them point fingers at their adversaries. If they think it's going to help them, they lean into that race card. They want you to vote for Winsome Sears just because she's black. They don't want you to look into her policies. But she's been back in the current administration. She ain't said nothing against them. Now, okay, if I'm wrong, you tell me, show me, let me know. I haven't seen it. I keep seeing these commercials from her, which is an interesting thing, because maybe perhaps that will show you, you know, when you see commercials, one thing you gotta know, that tells you who got the loot, who got the bread, who got the money. I've seen more Winsome Sears commercials than I have Abigail Spanberger commercials. Hope that ain't a sign. I hope that ain't a sign. But, you know, here's the thing that really bothers me about seeing the commercials and just the idea of voting for a black Republican. Because what I see is, as a deeper problem, what I see is a form of, a method, a style of superficial thinking. On the surface, or really, let's go deep. Let's go below the surface. What does it say about Republicans who, whether they think it directly, whether they think it, you know, subconsciously, or whether they're just calculating a strategic strategy? Them black people don't think they're not critical thinkers. They won't see it coming. They're not watching for the hook. They won't catch it. We can fool them, pull the wool right over their eyes. So the Republican who thinks black people are so simple or simple-minded, they think all they have to do is parade a black person in front of us and we gonna wanna vote. What it says is they don't think too highly of you. That's what it says. Especially when they themselves play both sides. Now, they'll play the race card left and right, but they'll point at you and say it's wrong for you to play the race card. And that's why they try to get away with denigrating. Oh, Lord, they go to Mike. That's why they try to get away with denigrating, castigating, and downplaying a black candidate when that person is running for office on the Democratic side. But then they got all types of praises for a black person in their own party. Now, I know there's a little bit of gamesmanship to that. There's a little bit of, the parties got to fight for their candidates. I get that. And you could just chalk it off to that's just politics. I might sooner say it's parlor tricks, but hey, I get the one side versus the other, but I ain't talking about that. I think it's something deeper. So here's what in the depth. I want you to dive into this, especially about here in this Virginia race. But before I go on, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, pro-black people, pan-African people, and those of you who look past and see through the smoke and mirrors. This is your brother Shabazz. You are tuned in to, you are watching, you are listening to The Proper Perspective. So hit the like button. Share this with somebody that you know might take an interest of it. Or even if they want to challenge me, even if they want to disagree with me. Yikes. Well, that's kind of weird. I just got a message. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Well, I had to put a pause on for a hot second. Yep, it is private. Oh no, that's the wrong one. Let me see. So let me see this. I'm having a technical difficulty. So we gotta double check this. Mic check, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Let me see if this works. So this one should be working. I gotta check something, ladies and gentlemen. Please give me a minute. Okay, so. Where was I? Okay, so. All right, we got sound back. We are live. Everything is still copacetic. Okay. So, where was I? I just finished my station identification. My shameless plug. So this is Shabazz, proper perspective. We talking about Virginia politics right now, tonight. Let me see. Let me dial that back down. Close that out. Okay, so as I was saying, we're talking about Virginia politics. Winsome Sears versus Abigail Spanberger. Yes, it's historic in Virginia to have the opportunity to vote for the first woman who will be heading up the government. And this is something that's very much worth talking about. It's historic that you have the opportunity to vote for a black woman to head up the government of Virginia. It's just as groundbreaking as when Doug Wilder was the first to captivate the voting public and mount that throne, or assume that throne, excuse my language. So it is quite historic to think about the idea of a black woman running the government, running Virginia. That's interesting. I would love that. But I don't think that's the best thing for the black community this election. So here's the thing. We should not ever, we should not be the type that only looks at the racial configuration of the candidate. We should not be the type that only looks at the racial configuration of the candidate. And I say that because I feel it is necessary to say, because what Republicans want, what right-wingers are hoping for, is that we will default to that inferior mode of thinking. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the chat. Let's see if I can add it to the screen. I might not be able to add it to the screen. Ain't learned how to do that yet, ladies and gentlemen. Pin. Well, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, so we are live. Shout out to the chat, as I said. So here's the idea. Right-wingers, Republicans, they are hoping that we will default to this vote for the black person. As if that's, as if it's a good thing, as if it's the way that we actually think. It still shows that they have no respect for us. We are a people of critical thinkers. We've always had to be critical thinkers. What they're hoping is, they hope that we would forget about the tax cuts that make it harder for us and vote because the woman is black. That's what they want. They don't want us to think about the tax cuts that they are implementing and the changes to tax laws that they are implementing. They're hoping we would forget about police brutality. They're the ones that uphold the police every time there's, an incident. And I'm not saying that, um, you know, it doesn't matter if you think there's too much police brutality or you think there's no police brutality. What I'm saying is, every time there's an uproar about an incident, it's the Republicans that say that don't matter. And we're supposed to forget that just so we can vote for a black person. That's what doesn't make sense to me. And that's what doesn't make sense to me in the sense that, like, I mean, the good thing is most black Americans, foundational or otherwise, still kind of lean in towards voting for Democrats. This is really for, this critique, or at least, is really for, like I said, the brothers and sisters that are on the fence, the brothers and sisters that, like, really just, if you're a black MAGA, black Republican, I really got problems. I really, like, help me understand what you're doing. They're hoping that we forget about a black woman who was in favor of protecting cookie killer cops simply because they wear the badge. Like, nobody is saying, oh, I ain't gonna say nobody. I can understand why some people would be pro-police. I can understand why. I don't support that. But I can understand why some people would be pro-police. What I don't understand is when you are so pro-police that you ignore the brutality. And the Republicans want you to ignore the brutality and just vote because she black. That's playing the race card. You know, I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything where Winsome Sears breaks from the party. Like, you got plenty of people in the Democratic Party that will break with the party. They'll be like, wait a minute, no, not on this. Bernie Sanders is a perfect example. You know, it is why he sort of like reclassified himself. So maybe, okay, that's a bad example. He's no longer a Democrat. He reclassified himself. He's an independent. He stays with the Democrats on a lot of issues. When he doesn't, he diverges. Jasmine Crockett is another good example then. She's a Democrat. She's not an independent. She's a Democrat. She may be part of the progressive squad, but she's clearly a Democrat. But she is not lock, stock, and barrel with everything that the Democratic Party or the machine, the elite leadership, says and does. I haven't heard Winsome Sears say anything, do anything, you know, speak out against any of the Republican, anything that the Republicans are doing. So, I mean, that should tell you something. She's clearly 100% fully engaged in everything that they're doing. So, we supposed to forget all that just because she's black? We should vote for her even though when we get assaulted, when we get brutalized, when we get terrorized by crooked killer cops. She ain't got no words for that. She ain't got no speech for that. She'll be the first one that they parade out there and say, the police officer did nothing wrong. We're supposed to forget the things that impact our daily lives just because she's black? That makes absolutely no sense. So why are they playing the race card? The reality is, and I spoke on this a little bit earlier tonight, and I spoke on this a little bit, I had a conversation with a friend. It's rather funny, it's rather hilarious that this black woman started up this bus tour. Now, I don't know if you saw that. I think the bus tour is really what got me, like, figuratively speaking, got me rolling on this issue. So she started up this bus tour where she's going, you know, just go all around the state. And I think it was the first one. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. But she She got to the first location. They looked outside the bus. Empty parking lot, ladies and gentlemen. So she started this bus. So she started up this bus campaign, and nobody showed up. Not even the white folk came out to vote to hear her. I wonder why. Now again, she's spending a lot of money on these commercials, so she doing something. But I'm just saying, I think there's a reason why nobody showed up. I know why black folk didn't show up. We not stupid. We not fools. They think we are. Republicans may think we're silly enough to vote just because she black. But I just think, like, we ain't got time for the BS. Even if a black person is thinking about voting for her, it's like, we don't have time for the BS. And I think that might have something to do with it. I also think it's interesting that she couldn't even garner enough hateful white folk to show up. Like, that really speaks volumes about, and she is technically she's supposed to be the person with the advantage. You know what I'm saying? This is supposed to be her home team, home turf type thing. But so when I think about this and I think about our history of voting, this notion that this gubernatorial race is groundbreaking. I mean, it's true, it's groundbreaking. But it's not all that groundbreaking as far as being a black person voting for a black person. We voted for Doug Wilder. Literally just in this state. We came out in droves because he was black, A, but not without B. Because he was in favor of the policies that we thought, that we think, that we believe were going to assist us in our journey. Why would you vote for someone that is radically opposed to the policies that you think, believe, and know will help you? And I'm talking finances. I'm not talking, like, if you really think that you should be voting for someone based upon your religious perspective, there is a problem. This ain't got nothing to do. Let me see if I get. Oh, it is on. Well, it's on my screen. I don't know if anyone viewing can actually see it, but yeah, they do it constantly. So they think we will too. It's like, nah, we not gonna fall for the okie doke. We can't afford to just vote for the person based on their race. And I say racial configuration. We gotta dive deep. We gotta get into the nitty gritty, the nooks and crannies. We have to investigate these candidates. They're gonna be there for 2 years or 4 years or 8 years. So we have a vested interest in being critical thinkers. The Republicans don't think we do. And so when you do the investigation, like I said, I'm gonna do a much deeper dive as the campaign trails heat up, as we get closer. But, shout out to Yah for the comment in the chat room. That's right. I still have not learned how to put these statements on the screen. At least not when I'm like live on this new setup. I thought I had it, but I don't. I do apologize. But so let me see. Where was I? Hit the like button. Hit the share button. Hit the notification button. Drop it. Say something in the comments. Now, there is and has been a new movement to go against a black person because they're black. This is true. There is, I'm going to say it again, there is, currently now, there has been, in the Kamala election especially, but these like historical revisionists, I guess is what you would call them, they even tried to go back and explain why we shouldn't have voted for Barack Obama. He really wasn't black. His mama white, so that makes him white. I don't even know how to express my my contempt for that train of thought. I really don't. So let me not digress. I know that Winsome Sears is black, but I honestly, when you draw down and look at the actual things that happen during the election cycles, we've hardly ever voted for a candidate just because they were black. We've always looked at the issues. Now, yes, if we begin to look at these new age brothers and sisters, and I almost feel repulsed to call them that, but that might be going too far. Let me slow it down. This new movement, where they're trying to just like strip and cut away and delineate. That's one of their favorite words. They're trying to delineate. And I'm like, okay, I get the idea. You want to delineate. I understand it. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but the way you go about it, I got a problem with that. But you do know that when you delineate, you're reducing your numbers. And so when you delineate the way y'all did, you delineate it because you said, well, this candidate isn't really black. It's much better if we vote for a white person instead of a black, not black person. Really though? So this new movement to go against a black person because you don't think they're really black, or they're just not the right kind of black. You know, even in that, it was a preferential argument rooted in BS, ladies and gentlemen. Literally saying, let's vote for the white guy who has a history of being against the black community, who has a history of shortchanging everybody, but in particular and especially black people, because the other candidate wasn't black to your liking. Now, that's an example of not being a critical thinker. That's who the Republicans want to be voting for Winsome Sears. They just want us to be duped by a candidate that might or might not be voting in our best interest. But this is the game that they play. These are the parlor tricks. This is the politics. The parlor tricks of politics that they're playing right in our faces. Now, I'm going to get to this conclusion. And I'm going to say, hopefully once the voting has been counted, the scam of a black candidate, the Republican selected individual, hopefully Winsome Sears loses. I'm putting that out there on Front Street. I do. I hope she loses. I hope she loses horribly. I hope Abigail Spencer slam dunks this thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, like, I don't have much hope. I'm not saying that the Democrats are going to save us. No. But I think that, especially in this day and age where tyranny is upon us, at the very least, you need a wedge. You need a wall. You need a brick wall that can stop the march of tyranny. And so I think it's a little bit more important to have a brick wall that can help stop the march of tyranny than to simply throw your hands up and say, I'm not going to participate. And then to say, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Because you can't never join them. You can't ever really join them. They will let a few through and use them for as long as they are needed. And the second they don't need you, you get the boot. Y'all do with that what you will. So yes, I hope that the Republican candidate loses this gubernatorial race. And yes, I do believe this is the proper perspective. But again, these were just a few of my thoughts on this issue. I would love to do battle with you on the battlefield. Let's duke it out in the comments. So say something below. Like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate you for listening. I didn't intend to be on here long, so I'm not going to belabor the point. This is Shabazz with the proper perspective. Like, share, and subscribe. Catch you on the next one.